Peace be with you. I invite us to reflect on the prayer of Jesus this morning, which is in John 17, 1 to 11. It was a prayer after a sermon and the sacrament of the Holy Eucharist. It was a family prayer and a parting prayer, which was sanctified and sweetened just as the dying Jacob blessed the 12 patriarchs, dying Moses, the 12 tribes. So here today, dying Jesus, the 12 apostles. The very first part of the prayer was to call God Father. And so we that have the spirit of adoption as children are invited to cry Abba Father, as in John 17 verse 25. First and foremost, Jesus prayed for himself that he might be glorified. For the hour has come when all the powers of darkness will come together to vilify thy Son. And so he was thus glorified in his suffering, by his suffering, and after his suffering. In his suffering, he was thus glorified when thunder struck the soldiers at Gethsemane, when Judas confessed him innocent and said that confession with his own guilty blood, when Pilate's wife and Pilate himself both pronounced him innocent, and when sun darkened and the veil of the temple rent. He was also glorified by his suffering because it was in his cross that he conquered Satan and death. His thorns became a crown, such that Pilate could write more than his thoughts in the inscription over his head, saying, "This is King of the Jews." Above all, after his suffering, he was glorified when he was raised from the dead and ascended into heaven. All this glorification can also be possible in our lives if our desires and designs in all trials and tribulations could be to honor God, who alone can grant us sufficient grace and the convenient opportunity to conquer them. In addition, he prayed that we may be sanctified in this world and glorified in the other world, with an eternal life that never dies and an immortal crown that never fades. This is the great end that Christian religion sets before us. Besides, he was very precise in his prayer, as in verse 9 he would say, "I pray not for the world, but for us Christians, because we are learners of his doctrine, witnesses of his life and miracles, monuments of his grace and favor, publishers of his gospel, and the planters of his church. Above all, as his creatures, we are in his hands as clay in the hand of the potter. We should therefore receive his word as ground receives the seed. Keep it, understand it, and set our sail on it. Although our weakness and dullness grieve him, let our gradual improvement give him joy, so that through the sincerity of our faith, he can graciously overlook our infirmity." Finally, this prayer is grounded on the firm foundation upon which Jesus would say to the Father, "All mine are thine, and all thine are mine." A statement that bespeaks one in essence, same in substance, equal in power and glory. We shall discuss this statement in 2 weeks' time at the Solemnity of the Holy Trinity. God bless you.